Guys, welcome back to the First Responder Playbook. I'm here with Mr. Bailey. He is someone that I came across and met through networking, and he is here to spread the love of interdiction police work. And, I often see these podcasts, they always just look for like the big names and, you work for a big agency. And man, I started out at a small town police department, and I understand that crime happens in these smaller towns. And especially when you got a big highway running through there. I mean, criminals travel these big highways. And, actually, the first agency I worked for had Highway 69 also in it. And, kind of explain to, everybody like how you got into law enforcement and how you ended up in enjoying the interdiction stuff.
So I've said it before, but I've got my whole family is in law enforcement. My dad was a cop growing up, so I was around it. I knew all the guys, and I didn't really know for sure what I was going to do until I was about 15, and I kind of decided in on that. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I started doing ride-alongs, going out with my uncles and stuff. They were troopers, and man, I kind of got tired of the biggest part of the night was what we were going to eat. So I said, hey, Dad, let me ride with those deputies. And I happened to get with one of the coolest guys I've ever met. I look at him like he's my older brother. He's now one of the U.S. Marshal team leaders and the violent crime investigator for our area. So does a lot of big stuff, but I got to hang around him and see what a proactive cop does. And that just kind of lit the fire up underneath me to not ever be average and just try to strive for the best. So I went on and got my associates in college with criminal justice. I worked in the jail system for a few years, about 5 years. And my cousin went on to become a trooper. And despite what they will tell you, they do get nervous. And he was a little scared to move off a couple hours away from where we were from. But I think it was over beers one night. He said, hey, I'm moving a couple hours away. Why don't you move down there with me? We don't have a wife and kids. So I said, yeah, sure. So we went down south. We kind of wanted to get out of our family's image and not live under, being so-and-so's son or so-and-so's nephew. And we also just thought it'd be good for us to start out our career somewhere where we weren't having to cut breaks because we knew people or run into that situation. So we did. We came down south, and I worked at a small agency called Kingston for a little bit, and not to bash anybody, but it just wasn't the place for me. There was, a lot of turnover going on at that time. So my cousin actually said, hey, man, look at this sheriff's office. And so I did, and I got hired at the Johnston County Sheriff's Office, which is down by Tishomingo, Oklahoma. Nothing but respect for those guys. They have an amazing sheriff. He's a workhorse. He instilled a lot of good values in me and really drove home like, hey, you young guys can arrest, 100 criminals a year, and it means nothing if you're not putting thorough cases out. So get to know what you're charging them with, understand the jury instructions of that crime. Very, very, particular about the way he wanted stuff done. And I'm so glad that he was because it really helps you in the long run. He always pushed me and would not allow anyone to, be laxed and just reactive over there. He wanted proactive cops. And I think he knew just how to talk to me to get me motivated. And I think it was right just a few months out of the academy, he sent me to an interdiction school. And from there, it was just like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. They had a bunch of guys working it, so I had to play catch up. And I think that's what pushed me even more to get in it faster, to get in it more heavy. And, so I was just trying to play catch up with some of the other guys in my department.
So let me ask you this. You said he encouraged you guys to be proactive and to get out there and work. Um, What did that look like to you guys when you're being a proactive? Are you guys out there just doing like selective enforcement? Are you guys doing interdiction? Like what were most of the guys doing?
All of it. So he had a big push for be seen in every community in the county. He wanted us to hit every town, make your presence known, be seen on the back roads, be seen that places, cops aren't usually at, be everywhere. And yeah, a lot of guys ran interdiction on the roadways. And so we were being proactive in that way as well. But community events, he wanted us there, hey, shake hands with people, talk to people, local games on Friday nights. If we didn't have a call, hey, stop by and hang out for 30 minutes, eat a hamburger or hot dog with us and talk to the little kids. Like he was very big on that. And he had a great thing going. I mean, still does. Still's the sheriff down there. We still talk all the time. I ended up leaving there after about 2 years. I had some stuff going with my daughter. I had a custody battle going on at the time. And I moved back home. I had an opportunity to go work at the same department with my dad. And I wound up there with him, which I thought was awesome to get to work with him at the same department and stuff like that. I forgot to mention that.
That's awesome, man. It's hard to understate like how much of a joy it is to have a good leader as a boss, and like to be able to like show you why this is the way it needs to be. And you made mention of him motivating you to get out there and do it. And in my last interview, we talked about this. It's You can't go into it anymore of thinking it's my way or the highway as a supervisor or a leader. Like, you're there to lead a group of different personalities every day, and it's important to be able to connect with every different person on your shift, as a supervisor, and so if one guy likes to go out there and be proactive in traffic enforcement, support him in that. Pick up that call slack. If the other guy likes to go work dope, like help him out in ways that he likes to work dope. Get him into good training, stuff like that. And like we've got to do better as supervisors to get in there and show these people, that next generation, like this is the way, like, this is what we expect. This is how we're going to help you get to that level, and this is how we're going to make you better. And, and I love that the sheriff wanted you guys to get involved in the communities. I mean, it's great to go arrest bad guys. That's a lot of the job. But you also have to build those community relations because you're going to be a member of those communities when you're around all the time, and so if you're in there doing good things, like those community members will give you good information. They'll be there to back you up when people are bashing the police, stuff like that. And it's I think people get this mindset of community relations of being this almost like hug a thug,
Yeah.
type of mentality, and that's not the case. Like, community relations and proactive police work can go together, because as much as you go in there and be proactive, you can also give back to your community and get involved. And those are not mutually like where they don't have to like go against each other. And I think a lot of people need to remember that at the end of the day, like you can do both.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
how'd you end up? I know you said your sheriff sent you to some interdiction schools. What stood out when you started going to these interdiction trainings that made you say, "Man, this is where I want to head that way"?
I would really think that it would be the the chess match of it. I like that because I like to line up against somebody and say, "Hey, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you at your own game." And I don't know what it is. It's just a competitive nature in me, but I love the fact of like, hey, I'll take my knowledge and you take yours, and let's go against each other. And on that traffic stop, I almost see it as like I'm battling it out with them. I'm going to be so professional and so polite, and I want to see if I can pick your story apart to where it doesn't make sense, or I can come up with a flaw that's not adding up, and find my way off in that car. And I think that's what it was. I guess that I really do have an act for talking. A lot of people jack around, and like my dad, he'll tell me, hey man, you could talk to a tree if you needed to, or whatever. And partners call me silver tongue or something. But yeah, I like that part of it. I think that's part of kind of my God given talent, was to talk to people on the streets and kind of make the most of it. And I would say that's probably what stood out to me about it. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're around any interdiction guy for the longest time, I mean, you kind of realize that most of them have a quirky personality, and the good ones know how to talk to people, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's 90% of what we do every day is talk to people. So, I mean, I think that's a great thing to have, is to be able to communicate with people effectively, and I think that a lot of times people think that we are out here just, writing people for speeding tickets and stuff like that, and stop signs, headlight, tail light out. And that's what they don't realize is, we're probably not going to write a ticket. We're actually looking for the bigger violation, the criminal activity type thing. And, I think that gets lost in the public's view a lot of times is, well, they think, well, this guy stopped me for 5 over. Well, no, there's more to it than that. We're actually out here working, looking for criminals. Some of our canine officers recently just got some guys with a murder warrant out of Illinois, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for them out there working traffic. And that's the epitome of good proactive police work. And I think that we've got to remember, like, you got to be out there and be proactive still. You can't be reactive anymore.
Yeah. That's actually a huge portion of my class that I talk about. My whole start out in the beginning is talking about proactivity and exactly what you said earlier, using the public to your advantage. I mean, we get so many benefits by working with people instead of trying to keep everything, secret squirrel style and do this and do that. Use what you can to your advantage and it will really help you. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, don't be wrong. There's a time and place that stuff you have to keep secret. But if it's, like, if you can work with the community, do it, because in the long run, it's going to help you out. So how did you end up getting to the point of where you wanted to start your own company? I mean, a lot of cops, they're like, police work, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's a big next step. Like, how'd you get there?
So the best way to describe it is kind of like I was saying. I just have this overwhelming drive to not be mediocre, and I don't want to have a career that I can't look back at and say I did my best. I did everything I could have possibly done. And I've heard that quote before. Our high school football coach used to say it. He was a very big inspirational guy, and I still remember it. The greatest tragedy in life is to not be as good as you can be. And so like when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, that's very true. Because you look back and have so many regrets, but if you give it your best effort, you're like, well, I don't regret anything because I gave it everything I personally had. So I just had the opportunity. We had a class, BID class, close, and I was like, I think I'm gonna do that. And I'd already been into the interdiction stuff, and so of course it was just common sense. Why not make my PowerPoint over that? I did my presentation, and I thought it was really cool that I had a lot of local guys in there with me, and we had to critique each other, give pros and cons, and everyone's pros were like, hey, this guy's really talking from his heart. We can tell that. We know that because we hear him searching cars every night. We hear him pulling people over. Like he does this for a living. And so it felt good. I was like, okay, maybe I'll go ahead and roll with this and just put on a class and see how it goes. And I did, and I had like 17 people show up, and I gave out little flyers at the end, just said, hey, don't put your name on them, just grade me, tell me what I could get better at. I just wanted to critique myself. And I got some really good reviews. And then after that, I started getting calls and texts, hey, when's the next one? When's the next one? I was like, okay, maybe this is something I need to look into doing. I'm passionate about it. I was having a lot of fun getting on your rants and your raves and kind of just going off on the topic that I love. So I did, and it started kind of blowing up, and things are working well. I mean, all these podcasts and everything are definitely helping. So I'm glad you brought me on, but it's awesome. I don't know. It just kind of snowballed and hadn't stopped yet. I hope it doesn't.
Well, I'll give you a bit of advice, and trust me, I'm not the world's foremost expert on police, but I heard something a couple months ago at this I lead a conference I was kind of telling you about in St. Louis, and it's an international group of police trainers, and they have a big conference in St. Louis every year. And there's a gentleman from Caliber, I think he's from Caliber Press, one of the big companies in the U.S. And he commented on a Facebook post after the conference, and he basically said along the lines of, it doesn't matter if you've got 2 or 3 people in that class. Yeah, would you like a bigger class? Of course. But you treat those people in there like it's their Super Bowl, and you give them the best effort that you're going to give if it was a 20-person class. And because at that point in time, those 3 people matter more than anything. And it doesn't matter if there's 2 people in there or 20 people, your still goal is to spread the knowledge that you have. And hopefully they can take something from that and present it out on the streets to make them a better officer. And that just hit home with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I Another thing I really like that you said um, is you on your own admission gave out feedback forms. Um, And you see a lot of times in big classes, like when the federal government or somebody teaches a class, they'll, hey, do our survey. You don't always see that in private classes. And, that's just like I was talking in my last interview. I guarantee you, with me getting this off the ground, there is certain things in this podcast that I need to work on and improve, be it a camera or better lighting or something. And I'm always open to feedback. And I really picked that up when you said that, is you went out of your way to get feedback to improve yourself and your class. And that's just a sign of growth, that you can pick that out and recognize that like, hey, there's stuff in here that's not going to be perfect. Tell me how to make it better. And I respect that a lot.
Well, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier about the being a leader and a boss type of thing too. Going on that, I've worked for both, and there is 100% a difference. Working for a leader, they will do things for you as well that'll benefit you, that will help you, and so I kind of took that and thought, hey, if I'm going to get up here and these people are trusting me to give them good information and to help them succeed, then I need to take recommendations back. I'm not the best interdiction guy in the world or something. I'm not going to stand up here and lie to these people. I get up and tell my class that all the time. And also recommend a lot of guys that I've learned a lot of stuff from. I say, hey, don't stop here. If this interests you, go take these guys' classes. So I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was needed. You got to critique yourself. We're never perfect, so you just got to do that kind of stuff to keep yourself in check and better yourself.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this: if there's a story you can share, what's your favorite interdiction story, arrest that you've had so far?
Man.
Like, if you had to pick one that's like, man, this is my favorite one that you can talk about.
Yeah, I better stick with my first one because there's some other stuff. My favorite, I probably shouldn't tell right now. Yeah, I'll stick with my first bust. Man, I got to where I was doing really well on finding, local dope, user amounts, maybe an 8 ball, maybe this, maybe that. But, of course, not hitting that trafficking weight up into ounces and, getting bigger type stuff. And I just kept pushing myself. And I really think I was praying to God that night, like, hey, God, just use me for whatever it is you got in store for me tonight. And I'm driving, kind of getting my head locked in for work. And right off the jump of the night, I come out to the highway, got Highway 270 running east and west, and I see a white Range Rover pass me. It has a cracked tail light and it's protruding white light out. So I'm like, okay, well, there's an easy stop. So I jump out on it, go to pull it over, and I notice as I'm pulling out that the tag sticker is a year out. So I'm like, okay, that's last year's. Um, Immediately to my presence, I realized this car tries to deter off and turn into a local Sonic. And to me, it doesn't look like it when I rewatch it on camera. But to me, when it happened, I thought they don't want to be around me. Like that's what it felt like to me, as they were doing it to my presence. So
They're ducking you.
I get up. Yes, exactly. So I get up and I initiate my lights. I get up there and start my stop. And right off the bat, the driver is very, very nervous. You can hear the shakiness in his voice. His pupils are very dilated. He's sweating. And keep in mind, it's about 32 or so at this time. So I'm narrating to my body camera the whole time, hey, why are you sweating so bad, sir? It's 32 degrees. Sir, why are your, pupils so dilated? This, that, and the other. And he will not stop trying to force information into the conversation of he buys and sells cars. That's what he does for a living. And I'm like, sir, that has nothing to do with showing me your license and your insurance. He keeps trying to force that. Eventually, he tells me, man, I don't have a license. I'm like, okay. Well, he had already tried to show me something that wasn't insurance. I'm not sure what he was trying to show me. But he was telling me he had valid insurance on the car, but could not produce anything on this car. So I get him out, and right before I get him out, I said, hey, man, is there anything illegal in this car? Because you are extremely nervous. You're showing signs of deception. And I asked him, I said, is there any marijuana in it? No. I said, is there any methamphetamines? And there was just a long hesitational pause. And then a no. We roll on through. So I'm thinking in my head, like, there's definitely some meth. By the way, he had to force that out of his mouth to me. So I said, hey man, go ahead and step out for me real quick. You're not under arrest at this time. I'm going to detain you until we can figure out what's going on with your license, whose car this is, all of that. So I get him out, and as I have him step out, I have him face into the doorway, kind of cuff him up, and he keeps nervously grabbing his front left pocket. At this time, I'm not sure if it's a gun or what he keeps touching, but I know it's making me feel uncomfortable as well. So I'm like, hey, stop reaching for stuff. I put him in cuffs, and I walk him back to the front of my car. As we get up to my car, I'm patting him down, and I feel a ball like object in his front left pocket and can hear the crinkling of like a baggie that it's in. So I'm like, okay, I think I know what that is, but I'm going to take a better look. So I kind of position myself at a different angle and can now see down at the seam of his pocket, and there's a baggie protruding out. And I just looked at him and said, man, is that a bag of dope? And he, I guess, just under stress and pressure, makes a horrible decision and tries to pull it out of his pocket and shove it down the back of his pants. So I said, hey, let
He's
go of
gonna
it.
hit it one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. He probably knew I wasn't going to try and reach down there. So I threw it up on the hood, and I think that ended up being about 60 grams. And I'm already thinking like, okay, cool. That's a decent little hit. And I walk him back to my car, set him down, and he says, hey, man. And after the fact, this guy ends up remembering me from the jail. So he was cool enough to tell me, don't touch that blue container up under my seat. And I said, okay. And, at that time I said, is it fentanyl? He said, yes. And keep in mind at this point in time, this was late 23 or early 24. Really before I had seen a big influx in my area of fentanyl. And so I was extremely nervous to touch it. I go up there and start trying to get it out. There's a pretty good amount underneath the seat in this blue container. And then I found multiple more bags of meth and pills and stuff shoved up under his seats underneath the Range Rover and kind of in between the cushions. So I was able to get all that out. He ended up having scales and several thousand in cash, and just it was all there. While I'm standing there, a big old bearded guy comes up and starts kind of talking to me, and I'm like, who is this mountain man, And little did I know at that time it was one of our state agents. So I guess that was someone that they had been watching. So he asked me, who gave you this? And I said, man, no one did, I promise. I think he thought I was lying to him or bullshitting. And I said, no, really, I'm not. So that kind of struck that friendship up. They were kind of watching him as well, I guess. He was the mid-range guy and was bringing quite a bit back down to southeast Oklahoma. So it was good to get him off the streets. I think that everyone benefited from it, especially a small town and community.
Yeah, a couple of things I picked up on there, and I really would like for you to touch on the importance of notating, whether it's on your body camera, for sure in your report, the signs of nervousness, instead of just saying, hey, they were nervous, like notating what made that nervous. That's an
Exactly.
extremely important part of the job.
Yes. So that is something in any interdiction class you're going to learn, you're going to go to, you're going to become a better cop because whether you use it to find drugs, to find money, to maybe stop a human or small child from being trafficked, um, you're going to learn those articulation tools and how to do that, how to word things in reports, how to basically get your feelings out on what you're feeling. You're going to be able to describe it a whole lot better instead of just saying, well, they were nervous. You got to go into detail. What made you think they were nervous? Why did you think they were being deceptive? What about the air fresheners in the car made you think that, that's strange? And then you just articulate, usually in rental cars, they say, not to smoke in them. So a air freshener that was bought, out of personal money to make someone else's car smell good is an odd thing to do, or however you want to articulate things. But you learn all of that in all of those schools. That's why I hope everybody would start doing it. I wish they would replace the old style of traffic stops with that because they are so much more effective in getting information and helping cops get to the bottom of what they're investigating.
Yeah, absolutely. And my first guest was a narcotics agent out of Montana, and he talked about the importance, or the way it's always been taught of don't work back down. And he was telling me a story of where he, got a mid-sized fish in a dope arrest, but they gave him some good information on somebody that was he was selling to,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out they ended up making a bigger case out of that, and they actually ended up, tying that gentleman to some murders from the sale of fentanyl pills, and it's all because they worked back down to then work back up again.
Right.
And law enforcement's never going to be linear and just straight line, same way every time. And you have to have an open mind on how to do police work and realize that things are going to change, things are going to be different each time, and to be able to work out of those situations where it's not exactly the same as it was last time and how you get to that end solution.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, admin. I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask the question anyways. Long term goal. Do you see yourself wanting to work the road and still do teaching part time, or do you eventually want to, start your own full time company and travel and teach?
I got asked that question the other day, and my answer is right now I am not done doing what I'm doing. I love the department that I'm at. I love the community. I'm seeing a lot of great people are super excited around the community. I'm seeing our crime rates are down 62% since we've started running this stuff, and my partners are fired back up. We hit several search warrants in town. We've done some really cool things. I never would have guessed in my first, 4 years or so. I've worked stuff with the ATF, the Marshal Service, OBN, the DEA, all these big agencies that, I would have never guessed that all these things were possible just by going out and running a certain type of traffic stop and learning a few things. So I'm still having a lot of fun. I don't have anything else in mind. Like I said, later down the road, I don't know. I don't know what doors might open and what God might put in front of me, but I'm willing to be here when that calling comes. But until then, I'm just having fun and enjoying my job and trying to, do everything the best that I can. I'll keep teaching these classes as long as people keep showing up and calling and wanting them. And I
Well,
think that's,
you kind of get the best of both worlds. You still get to get out there and be proactive and make a difference on a day to day basis, and still teach on the side. And
yes,
you know, I I kind of alluded to it earlier. I always say that you always see these podcast guys. They only want guys from big agencies, but man, I came from a smaller agency starting out, and then I went to a little bit bigger agency, but the same size town roughly. It's kind of like you think of like a college football coach. They're going to start out at a lower level for the most part, and then work their way up. But at the end of the day, the police work's still the same. It's just on a
yeah,
different scale.
absolutely,
You know, for where you're at, I mean, you've got the right mindset of, hey, we're out here making a difference. We're getting involved in the community. We're getting out here taking criminals off the streets. And that's what matters. Like, at the end of the day, that is what matters. That's why we do what we do. And that's a good mindset to have.
I definitely try to keep a positive outlook. You know as well as I do that cops can gripe more than anybody, but like I said, I just don't pay attention to it and kind of stay on my own beat and do my own thing. And I don't know, people want to hang out and they can come hang out with me and run it with me. If not, they want to go cry and complain, go do that somewhere else, I guess.
Yep. So tell me about your class, the class that you're teaching.
So it is 10 credit hours of complete. I started out, you're just kind of wanting to run down what it is, what it's about.
Yeah.
So I started out in I'm sorry, not proper patrol, but proactive patrol, and kind of base it off of working your town or your community or your county, work your crime there and work up. Sharpen your knife, get those small scale people and sharpen your blade, make yourself more comfortable with your routine of how you want to search vehicles or how you want to, get your search warrants or just kind of your style. Everyone has a preference on what they say to people at their door, and how they ask their questions. So I really encourage that. Like we were talking about with the community stuff, I tell everybody, every call that you go on, do your best to let those people know that you're there for that time. Don't just hand them a feel good report, let them fill it out and drive off. Because that person's going to know when you leave, hey, he gave me 100% effort, or that guy didn't care at all. He acted like he didn't care. So take advantage of it. If it's old Granny Smith that you're talking to, get out there, give her your best effort, try to find her stolen property or whatever it is that you're there. Give her your effort while you're there. You're going to be there regardless. You might as well put effort in. And then, hey, this has happened to me before, and this is one of the examples I use is you never know when, right across the street, there's going to be some stolen property, and maybe over at Granny Smith's house, she's got a Ring doorbell camera. Well, now you've made a good impression on that woman, and you're able to go back over and say, hey, ma'am, do you remember me? Yeah, you're that officer that found my stolen property. And say, yes, ma'am, hey, is there any way that, I could use your camera to see who was pilfering around in this yard next door? Whatever it is. And that's why I strongly encourage, put in the effort, be proactive in your community. You don't know when you're going to need those resources. Maybe you're watching a dope house. And I always tell people, I personally, I work a 4 on, 4 off schedule. So there's 4 days of the week that I'm not there. And there's a whole lot of hours on those days that I am, that I'm at home asleep or with my family. But, the people that live right next door or across the street, they're there all day. That's their house. They're there a lot more than we are. Use them to your advantage. Go up and make a consensual encounter and talk to them and say, hey, I've got something on kind of on my radar. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but hey, are y'all noticing anything in this area? Never have I ever walked up to someone and asked that and then say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. They're going to say, oh yeah, right next door, that where that blue car is. They know exactly what you're talking about. They don't want it
Yep.
there either. So use those people to your advantage. They're willing to help you. We go off into that, and then we start into the interdiction tactics. And I am one of those guys that I do not like death by PowerPoint. So I put a lot of body camera footage in there, pictures, things to keep it interesting, and little side stories that keep everybody intrigued. And we review it together, and we'll go over signs of deception and things that I look for, things that I like to do, what's worked best for me. And like I said, I don't stop with just myself. I recommend other guys' classes. I always refer to myself as a smaller guy that's teaching it, I say, hey, go look at these other really big name guys, Jeremy Ellison and, Nick Jackson and the ASIC crew. Those guys are huge, made a huge impact on me. Jeremy Benningfield, that guy can find traps like nobody's business. There's a whole world out there of these guys that are just rock stars. And I'm just a small fish in the pond, but that's like I said, I am striving to get there one day. So, but
Yep.
yeah,
And
that's
that, and and I think I've been there too when I've taught a class of like, well, my stuff's not as good as that one. And at the end of the day, you really just want people to learn from what you're teaching. And
yes,
if even if they take one piece of it, or if they think your class is the best it's ever, as long as they learn something, at the end of the day, that's what matters. And you'll get better teaching as you do it more often, and you'll add other things in, and everybody starts at the bottom at some point, and there's nothing wrong with that.
right,
So,
yeah. No, I'm not
how
ashamed of it at all.
yeah, and I honestly I think around this area, we're pretty blessed to have some very good, from patrol level narcotics to interdiction level narcotics to street crimes type stuff. We've got some really good instruction that's been coming to this area lately, and I like seeing officers branch out and teach these classes to pass that knowledge along that they do have to the next generation. I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely want it to get out there and be easily accessible to everybody because like I said, I feel kind of feel bad for some departments, man. Training's hard to get and I didn't realize that. I've always been pretty blessed with the agencies that I've worked with. We've had decent budgets and, training budgets set aside for what we want to go do. But there really are. I've talked to departments that just don't have the money and that is, one of the biggest things that towns, cities, counties, everybody should be pushing money into is to get better trained police. That's just there should be the end goal.
Yep. But they don't, and that's where a lot of us have to pick up the slack and help out and guide these guys that hey, maybe you can't pay to come to our class. Like, let's work something out. And at the end of the day, we got to remember that we probably were there at one point and somebody cut us a break to help us out. And I think that's a good mindset to have.
It is. It's actually
No, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, that guy that I had talked about earlier, Cody Vaughn, the one that I really look up to and have always, thought was the greatest guy ever. He actually told me that one time, right in my first search warrant. I was nervous, I was scared. I had everything I needed to do. I was just like, hey, man, I want to make this sound good. And he said, yeah, come over. I'll look over it, make sure you've done everything right. And we sat down and we did it. And man, he was beat that week. He had done a ton of stuff and been called out by the Marshal Service, was investigating a bunch of stuff going on in the county. And he said, you got to make me a promise. And I said, okay. And he said, I did this because I know that you're young and you're proactive and you need this guidance, but one day I want you to repay it back to the, whatever young gung ho cop comes up to you and needs a little bit of guidance and help. You have to repay that favor back. I said, all right, I'll make you that deal. And that's always stuck with me too, is he took that time to invest in me, so I need to do that and give back as well.
Yep,
Not
that's
that
good.
I am some super experienced guy or anything, but
Again, even if they learn one thing from you, that's what matters.
right.
So, as we kind of start wrapping up, tell me if somebody wanted to book you for a class, like how did they get in contact with you?
So I've got a
And
Facebook.
tell them your company name too.
Okay. It is Beginner and Basics Interdiction Tactics. You can find me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook business page, or you can join the group for all your networking purposes. I don't mind anyone chit-chatting on there, or discussing things that we're seeing, trends, anything like that. Right now, I've been staying in-state. I'm more comfortable with that at the moment. I'm trying to manage my butt chewings at home for how much I'm on the road and everything. So, yeah, I am keeping it in-state at the moment. But man, if y'all want to come to a class, jump on that page. My number's on there. Contact me, talk to me. I don't care if you got questions. You're just interested in general. Get on there and join the page, and yeah, give me a call and we'll get something lined out. If I can find a class that someone doesn't care, and I'll invite you to it and let you come out.
Awesome. And I'll get your information posted in the show links so that everybody can find it. I just want to tell you thanks for joining me, man, and have a good night.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.